They say, if you want to know the real Hollywood, read the books they tried to burn. Behind the glamour, a secret war has raged for decades. One fought in courtrooms, back rooms, and shadowy phone calls to publishers. What makes a biography so dangerous that studios scramble to bury it? Tonight, we'll crack open 15 forbidden books, each one a key to the industry's most explosive secrets. Some stories survived, others nearly vanished forever. Ready to see what the cameras never showed? Hollywood Babylon by Kenneth Anger. There's never been a Hollywood book so feared, so blacklisted, and so violently debated as Hollywood Babylon. When Kenneth Anger's True History of Tinseltown exploded onto the scene in the late 1960s, it didn't just pull back the curtain, it set the whole stage ablaze. Studios panicked. Bookstores got calls in the dead of night to yank it off their shelves. Lawsuits flooded in, and in France, the authorities simply banned it outright. The reason? Anger didn't just gossip, he detonated a bomb. Page after page, Hollywood Babylon unleashed a torrent of grotesque secrets and lurid scandals. Anger told of Fatty Arbuckle's sensational criminal trial, the mysterious death of Thelma Todd, and the dark rumors behind Jean Harlo's tragic love life. There were tales of illegal abortions orchestrated by studios, deaths by overdose, brutal affairs, and accidents covered up with bribes and threats. Anger spared no one. In his world, innocence was just another Hollywood illusion. What terrified the industry most wasn't the embellishments or the mistakes, though Hollywood Babylon had plenty of those. It was how often Anger's wildest stories cut too close to the truth, echoing things that insiders knew, but never dared say aloud. For decades, Hollywood had spent millions to keep these stories out of the headlines, and suddenly they were all there, in black and white, for anyone to see. The backlash was fierce. Officially, everyone condemned the book, calling it sensationalist, slanderous, and unreliable. Unofficially, Hollywood Babylon became forbidden fruit, whispered about at parties, photocopied in secret, devoured by everyone with something to hide or something to prove. Its legend grew each time a lawsuit failed or a copy slipped past the ban. For years, Anger's book was almost impossible to find in the U.S., which only fueled its mystique. Even now, the industry hasn't forgiven him for airing its dirtiest laundry. In the end, Hollywood Babylon isn't just a book. It's a warning, a dare, and a testament to the secrets Hollywood still can't bury. Lulu in Hollywood by Louise Brooks. Louise Brooks was once the silent screen's sultry darling, a bobbed-haired icon whose face launched 1,000 movie posters. But even at her height, she was never content to be Hollywood's puppet. In a world obsessed with image and obedience, Brooks was an anomaly, fiercely independent, deeply intelligent, and, above all, honest to a fault. When she published her memoir, Lulu in Hollywood, in the 1970s, it wasn't just another star's self-serving confessional. It was a hand grenade lobbed straight into the myth of old Hollywood. Brooks didn't just allude to the industry's dark underbelly. She put it on the page, with names, dates, and no apologies. Her memoir peeled back the gauzy studio facade to reveal a world of manipulation, sex, and raw survival. She wrote about the predatory moguls who ran the studios like personal fiefdoms, the casting couch offers that came with every contract, and the cruel calculus of beauty and power that dictated a woman's worth. She even chronicled her own desperate forays into sex work when the studios, having wrung every last ounce of youth from her, cast her aside. The backlash was as swift as it was ruthless. Studios quietly pressured bookstores to pull the memoir from shelves, citing moral indecency and warning of legal consequences. Some countries banned the book outright. Others allowed only heavily censored versions. Former colleagues lined up to brand Brooks a liar, a troublemaker, or worse, unstable. But even her harshest critics couldn't erase the bruised truth in her writing. Readers felt every wound, every betrayal, every brutal turn that came with stardom in a system designed to break you, not make you. Lulu in Hollywood became a lightning rod, whispered about in industry circles, and devoured by women who recognized themselves in Brooks's unflinching prose. Decades later, it stands as both a forbidden handbook and a survivor's testimony, proof that the Golden Age was built not just on dreams, but on broken promises and voices that refused to be silenced. For anyone willing to look past the studio gloss, Louise Brooks left behind the ultimate blueprint for what it really cost to be a star. The life story of Mae West by Mae West. Mae West built her entire career on breaking rules. But even Hollywood's bawdiest trailblazer wasn't prepared for the chaos unleashed by her autobiography. The life story of Mae West didn't just raise eyebrows, it set off a cultural earthquake. The moment it hit shelves in the early 1930s, cities like Boston moved fast, branding it obscene, ordering mass confiscations, and threatening criminal charges for any shop that dared to stock it. The outcry wasn't just about sex, it was about exposure. West didn't whisper about Hollywood hypocrisy, she shouted it. In her unmistakable voice, Mae West wrote openly about sexual freedom, a parade of lovers, and her absolute refusal to grovel before censors or moral gatekeepers. She named names, described in detail how studio heads who banned her movies were the same men who sent flowers and begged for private performances behind closed doors. The hypocrisy was staggering, and West held nothing back. She described studio fixers, secret payoffs, and betrayals with a clarity that made the industry's leaders furious and terrified. For many, West's autobiography was a revolution. It was the first time a female star spoke so bluntly about Hollywood's double standards and dirty secrets, refusing to let anyone rewrite her story. The authorities thought banning the book would kill it, but instead, demand skyrocketed. Underground copies sold out, and West's legend only grew. The ban itself became part of her mystique, a testament to how threatening honesty could be in a world built on illusion. In the end, the life story of Mae West wasn't just a memoir. It was a dare, a provocation, and a warning. If you dig beneath Hollywood's golden surface, you'd better be ready for what you find. A Life on Film by Mary Astor. Mary Astor was the epitome of a Golden Age leading lady, poised, elegant, and for years, a silent witness to Hollywood's dirtiest secrets. But with her memoir, A Life on Film, she did what few dared. She told the truth, and she told it with the receipts. For decades, Astor's name was linked to the infamous Purple Diary, a journal that chronicled her torrid affairs with producers, actors, and even some of the most powerful studio executives. In the 1950s, snippets from that diary became weapons in a tabloid trial meant to destroy her. But the real shock came when word got out that Astor had written it all down in her memoir, uncut. The industry panicked. A Life on Film was never supposed to see daylight as Astor intended. The raw, unfiltered account of sex, betrayal, and the emotional blackmail woven through Hollywood's fabric threatened to pull down careers and shatter reputations that had been carefully preserved for decades. Studio lawyers moved quickly, drafting lawsuits and sending threats. Powerful families called in favors to force publishers to yank whole chapters. Some early editions were pulled from shelves before anyone could crack the spine. A few were even destroyed outright, turning the uncensored manuscript into a collector's legend. What survived publication was a muted echo of Astor's original truth, a memoir stripped of its sharpest edges but still pulsing with the pain and honesty of a woman who refused to be silent. Even in its edited form, A Life on Film offers a glimpse into a world where silence was survival, and where every star knew that telling the truth came at a cost. Mary Astor dared to lift the veil, and Hollywood tried everything in its power to stitch it shut again. Swanson, on Swanson, by Gloria Swanson. Gloria Swanson wasn't just a silent film icon. She was one of Hollywood's earliest and most formidable power players, famous for both her dazzling on-screen presence and her off-screen appetites. But what truly set the industry on edge was her willingness, decades later, to break the ultimate rule: don't talk. When Swanson on Swanson hit shelves in 1980, it rattled the foundations of Hollywood's old guard and reignited scandals most thought had been safely buried. Swanson pulled no punches in her autobiography. She openly discussed her string of high-profile affairs, her experience with secret abortions at a time when such a confession could ruin a woman, and the elaborate double lives led by everyone from studio moguls to supposed America's sweetheart stars. The book was a raw, unvarnished portrait of a studio system built on lies and self-preservation, where actresses were expected to perform off-screen as much as on. Swanson's willingness to name names and recount the machinations of studio fixers, financial blackmail, and even the coercive doctoring of starlets' bodies made her memoir the talk of the town and a target. It didn't take long for pressure to mount. Hollywood lawyers descended on her publisher, demanding changes to chapters that referenced living power players and family names still profiting off the golden age. The first printing of Swanson on Swanson was, in several markets, heavily redacted. Key passages were removed or reworded under legal threat, and in some countries, early editions were quietly withdrawn or delayed as lawyers combed through every page. In Los Angeles and New York, certain bookstores received advice not to stock it at all. Meanwhile, advance copies of the unedited manuscript became hot commodities, passed hand to hand among insiders eager to know which stories had slipped through the cracks. Despite the censorship, Swanson's account became a blueprint for later Hollywood tell-alls. Her brutal honesty, paired with an almost regal indifference to the consequences, forced the industry to reckon with its own history, at least in whispers. Swanson on Swanson proved that no matter how carefully a studio tried to bury the past, there was always a star bold enough to dig it up and dare the world to look. Gloria Swanson didn't just survive Hollywood, she exposed it, and the industry's attempts to silence her only made her story more irresistible. My Wicked, Wicked Ways by Errol Flynn. Errol Flynn lived and burned through more lives than most Hollywood legends could dream of. His autobiography, My Wicked, Wicked Ways, didn't just peel back the curtain. It tore it down and set it on fire. Flynn wrote with swagger and self-destruction, confessing to excesses that would have made even the most jaded mogul blush. The book wasn't just a memoir, it was a warning shot. It detailed his countless affairs, brushes with the law, fistfights on and off set, and most damning of all, the hidden machinery that protected stars while exploiting everyone else. Flynn called out the studio bosses, named names, and admitted to acts that most publicists would have sold their souls to keep buried. When his publisher first saw the manuscript, panic spread like wildfire. Legal threats poured in from every corner of the industry. Several publishing houses refused to touch it. The studio's top brass wanted the book permanently shelved, terrified of what it would spark. In the end, the first edition was heavily redacted. Passages vanished, entire episodes sanitized, and some copies even pulled from store shelves after lawsuits started to stack up. Yet, the full manuscript survived in the underground, passed among insiders, and sought after by scandal-hungry fans. Even today, the unfiltered My Wicked, Wicked Ways is legendary, not just for its revelations, but for showing how quickly Hollywood's powers close ranks when the mask slips. Flynn died before seeing his book fully uncensored, but he made sure the world knew exactly what kind of sins Hollywood tried to keep in the dark. Child Star by Shirley Temple Black. By the time Shirley Temple turned 10, she was the most famous child in the world, a smiling face and curls, who saved a studio and gave Depression-era America something to believe in. But behind those iconic dimples was a childhood twisted by adult greed, manipulation, and secrets Hollywood wanted buried. When Shirley Temple Black released her memoir, Child Star, she knew exactly what she was risking. The first draft was fearless. She recounted, with chilling honesty, how powerful producers and directors routinely crossed boundaries, physically and emotionally, with underage talent. She described the infamous black box punishment, where misbehaving children were forced to sit on blocks of ice, and revealed the shocking, predatory advances of studio executives, some of whom are still household names. The studios were quick to respond, dispatching lawyers and advisors to Temple's publishers, demanding rewrites, threatening lawsuits, and calling her misremembered or hysterical. Key chapters detailing sexual harassment, financial theft by adults, and the system of silence enforced upon child stars were slashed or softened for publication. Early galleys were pulled from shelves. At one point, studio insiders even tried to buy out the entire print run. Despite the edits, Child Star stood as a rare document, a survivor's account that cracked the myth of innocence surrounding Hollywood's youngest, most vulnerable workers. The uncut drafts, circulating quietly among researchers and journalists, confirmed what everyone in the business already whispered. Behind every rags-to-riches legend was a system ready to chew up children for profit, then threaten them into silence. Shirley Temple Black's courage in writing the truth, however much it was censored, remains a beacon for those who refuse to let Hollywood's darkest stories stay buried. Mommy Dearest, by Christina Crawford. Few books have ripped the mask off a Hollywood legend the way Mommy Dearest did. Christina Crawford's explosive memoir wasn't just a daughter's cry for justice. It was a bomb lobbed straight at the foundations of Hollywood's queenly mythmaking. Joan Crawford was the industry's self-made Cinderella, adored for her iron will and glamour. But in Mommy Dearest, Christina revealed a home life full of emotional terrorism, violence, and trauma. She painted a portrait of a woman who, behind closed doors, wielded wire hangers and harsh discipline instead of motherly love. The book's release in 1978 sparked outrage, less for its contents than for its audacity. Studio defenders, agents, and lawyers for Crawford's estate rushed to label it a pack of lies, pressuring bookstores to pull it and urging libraries to keep it off shelves. Some states, like Texas and parts of the South, quietly dropped the title from public library lists after receiving complaints. Hollywood insiders called Christina an ingrate, a liar, or worse. But the memoir's details rang true for many who had survived similar abuse, and some of Crawford's closest confidants admitted, off the record, that the star's temper and rages were notorious. Multiple lawsuits were filed, and the book faced threats of full bans in several countries. But it kept selling, fueled by both scandals and the reality it exposed. Even as Hollywood tried to kill the story, Mommy Dearest lived on, transforming Joan Crawford's legacy forever. Christina's courage cracked the culture of silence around abuse by stars, setting a precedent for generations to come. The truth has a way of clawing its way to the surface, no matter how hard the industry tries to bury it. Sammy Davis Jr. was a one-man phenomenon, a triple-threat talent who broke barriers and lived life at full volume, both on and off the stage. But when he decided to tell his own story in Sammy, an autobiography, the world got a version that was as raw and dangerous as the times that shaped him. Davis's memoir exposed the racism and humiliation he faced daily in Hollywood. Hotel doors slammed in his face, contracts torn up when studio bosses learned of his interracial relationships, and mobsters lurking behind supposedly friendly studio deals. He wrote about nights spent drinking with Frank Sinatra, about his own demons with addiction, and about secrets that most black performers were pressured to keep hidden: beatings, bribes, and clandestine affairs with starlets, both black and white. Hollywood's power brokers, terrified of the book's potential, worked in the shadows to silence it. After the first edition, several printings were quietly censored. Whole passages about studio racism and organized crime were omitted in reissues. Some stores in Los Angeles and the Deep South refused to stock it altogether, citing community standards. Industry figures, including Davis's former managers and handlers, sent threats and made hush-money offers. Yet, even in its published form, Sammy was a revelation, shattering the myth of the post-racial Hollywood dream. The full, unredacted manuscript circulated in private, confirming that Davis's story was even darker and more defiant than the world realized. In the end, his book wasn't just about his journey. It was about the lengths to which Hollywood would go to keep its ugly truths out of the spotlight. Buster Keaton, Cut to the Chase by Marion Mead. The great stone face, Buster Keaton, always kept his private pain hidden behind an impassive mask and perfect comic timing. But Marion Mead's Buster Keaton, Cut to the Chase, finally dragged the bruises, betrayals, and backroom deals of Keaton's Hollywood out into the open, and the industry recoiled. Keaton's image had long been protected as that of a lovable, tragic clown, a genius undone by the coming of sound. But Mead's biography revealed the truth. Keaton was systematically exploited by studios, tossed aside when his alcoholism worsened, and used as a pawn in financial games that destroyed his creative control. The book dives into Hollywood's toxic drinking culture, studio parties where executives encouraged substance abuse, deals made over whiskey-soaked tables, and friendly contracts that quietly robbed artists of their earnings and dignity. Some of the most damning pages recount how MGM forced Keaton into a series of degrading roles, all while pressuring him to keep silent about the abuse and coercion he endured. When advance copies landed in Hollywood, the reaction was fast and fierce. Studios issued legal threats, and MGM's lawyers pressured Mead's publisher to cut whole chapters. Several early editions were yanked from shelves, and stories circulated that a mysterious benefactor had bought out entire print runs to suppress distribution. What did the industry fear? That Keaton's story would make it clear just how disposable stars really were, and just how willing the powerful were to destroy the lives of those they once celebrated. The uncut version, passed quietly among Hollywood historians, remains a chilling record of what the Golden Age was really built on: talent chewed up and discarded by a system that didn't care who it broke. Luella Parsons, The Queen of Hollywood Gossip by Samantha Barbas. Luella Parsons was Hollywood's original gossip queen, the woman who could make or break careers with a single rumor in her daily column. Samantha Barbas's Luella Parsons. The Queen of Hollywood Gossip dared to put Parsons herself under the harsh spotlight she'd so often directed at others, and the result was a biography that rattled the studio system even decades after Parsons' death. Barbas unearthed evidence that Parsons' legendary power came not just from her pen, but from secret alliances with studio bosses, fixers, and even mobsters. The book lays out how Parsons helped suppress scandals, bullied rivals, and even helped orchestrate cover-ups involving pregnancies, affairs, and crimes, all in exchange for scoops and special favors. Hollywood's old guard was not amused. When the manuscript began to circulate, estates of major stars threatened lawsuits, and several early printings were redacted. Whole sections about famous names were replaced with vague allusions, and later editions were quietly corrected after threats from lawyers representing families, studios, and Parsons's own estate. Some bookstores received warnings against carrying the uncensored edition, especially in Los Angeles. What makes this biography so dangerous? It exposes the dark symbiosis between the press and the industry, the way reputations, lives, and sometimes justice itself were bought and sold like just another headline. Barbas's research made it clear: Hollywood's myth machine didn't just rely on illusion. It required a network of enablers willing to twist the truth for profit. The original, uncensored chapters remain the stuff of legend, circulated quietly by those eager to know just how deep the rot really went. Sinatra, The Chairman by James Kaplan. Frank Sinatra's story has always been shrouded in myth, carefully curated by his handlers and fiercely protected by both family and friends, with connections reaching far beyond the movie studios. But James Kaplan's Sinatra, The Chairman was different, a deep-dive biography that dug up not just Sinatra's struggles and triumphs, but his darkest entanglements with organized crime, dirty politics, and the real power behind the Hollywood throne. When the book's manuscript first leaked to the Sinatra estate and certain shadowy associates, alarm bells rang. Kaplan refused to gloss over the rumors. Alleged mob-facilitated casting decisions, stories of Sinatra using intimidation to get his way, and the secret backroom deals that kept his career bulletproof, even as others fell. Some of the most explosive chapters detailed Sinatra's relationships with notorious underworld figures, including Sam Giancana and Lucky Luciano, stories that, if accepted as fact, would have shattered his image as America's favorite crooner. The Sinatra family responded with legal threats, and several publishers hesitated to release the book in its original form. After multiple lawsuits and friendly advice from powerful quarters, some editions were withdrawn or sold only in sanitized versions. Libraries and bookstores in New Jersey, Las Vegas, and certain Hollywood neighborhoods reported missing shipments. Stories persist that entire print runs disappeared after organized pressure. But even redacted, Kaplan's book stood out. It made the point that Hollywood success was never just about talent, but about who you knew, what you hid, and how far you'd go to keep your place at the top. The battle over Sinatra. The Chairman was never about one man's legacy. It was about whether anyone could survive telling the truth about the machinery that made, and sometimes destroyed, Hollywood royalty. The Real James Dean. Intimate Memories from Those Who Knew Him Best, by Peter L. Winkler. James Dean's death at just 24 cemented him as Hollywood's eternal rebel. But the real James Dean, Intimate Memories from Those Who Knew Him Best, ripped away the legend's mystique and exposed a much darker, tangled truth. Peter L. Winkler's collection of first-hand recollections and private letters was more than a tribute. It was a challenge to the official Hollywood narrative. Here, for the first time, friends, lovers, and colleagues described Dean's complicated relationships, his struggles with sexuality, and his fraught dealings with studio bosses, who saw him as both a goldmine and a liability. These accounts revealed the network of secret affairs, hidden contracts, and off-the-record interventions that propped up the James Dean myth. The book didn't just upset fans. It triggered outright panic among those who still held stakes in Dean's image. Lawyers representing the estates of studio executives, and even Dean's own family, swooped in, demanding that entire sections be removed before the first major release. Some stories, those alluding to Dean's rumored affairs with powerful male producers, or to how he was manipulated into taking roles, were quietly excised from later editions. Lawsuits and legal threats delayed publication in both the U.S. and Europe, and even after its release, several bookstores in California and New York were pressured to pull the book from shelves. Advance unedited proofs quickly became collector's items, sought after by biographers and film historians hungry for the raw, uncensored material. The sanitized version that reached most readers was still explosive, but those who got their hands on the uncut accounts saw a truer, messier, and more human portrait of a man Hollywood tried desperately to freeze in time. Winkler's work remains a reminder that when it comes to preserving the image of a star, the industry's real business is often in burying the truth. Me. Stories of My Life, by Katherine Heppern. Few stars have ever held the screen, or the public's imagination, quite like Katherine Heppern. Her memoir, Me. Stories of My Life, promised readers an unfiltered look behind her famously guarded persona. But what hit shelves in 1991 was just the tip of the iceberg. Early drafts of Hepburn's autobiography were far more revealing, packed with unflinching details about her affairs, her legendary feuds with studio bosses, and the carefully hidden chaos of her private life. Heppern, never one to bow to pressure, described her struggles with Hollywood's patriarchy, the demands for feminine conformity, and the constant negotiation between her personal convictions and studio expectations. She touched on her complicated relationships, not just with men, but with women, including the persistent rumors about her closeness to certain co-stars that the industry always worked hard to downplay. That honesty, however, was almost too much for Hollywood's old guard. As news of the memoir's contents reached the surviving families and legal teams of Hepburn's contemporaries, pressure mounted. Studio lawyers and protectors of old Hollywood's golden reputation worked behind the scenes, urging her publishers to excise entire stories and even rewrite passages that implicated still living legends or threatened valuable reputations. Hepburn herself, though fiercely independent, was coaxed and cajoled by friends and advisors to leave out her harshest takes on the people and power brokers who shaped her career, and sometimes nearly broke her spirit. By the time Stories of My Life made its way into bookstores, several key episodes had vanished, sanitized to avoid lawsuits and public outcry. But even in its edited form, Hepburn's memoir remained an act of rebellion, a glimpse into the world of a woman who refused to be tamed, who saw and survived the ugliest sides of Hollywood's myth-making machinery. The full truth, passed around in private circles and hinted at by biographers, proved once again that the industry's real history often lives between the lines, in the stories that almost got away. Harlo, an intimate biography by Irving Shulman. No Hollywood life burned brighter or ended more abruptly than Jean Harlo's. Irving Shulman's Harlo. An intimate biography was the first major attempt to pull back the layers of myth surrounding the platinum blonde and reveal the raw, aching truth of her rise and fall. What made Shulman's book so dangerous was its refusal to play by Hollywood's rules. He delved into the allegations of abuse, the manipulative machinations of MGM, and the rumors of secret medical procedures, sexual exploitation, and a marriage that ended in tragedy. Shulman painted a picture of a woman adored by millions, but powerless in the grip of studio bosses who saw her only as a commodity. The response was immediate and fierce. MGM, still keen to protect its image and legacy, launched a full-scale legal assault, threatening to sue for libel and invasion of privacy. Harlo's family also intervened, issuing statements that denounced the book as slanderous and pushing to block its distribution in Los Angeles and other major cities. Bookstores faced threats of boycotts, and some, particularly in California, removed the biography from shelves altogether. Early, unedited copies were quietly bought up by collectors and insiders, further fueling the book's legend. Yet, for all the attempts at suppression, Harlo left an indelible mark on the way Hollywood biographies were written. It was a turning point, a reminder that the truth about fame's casualties could not be erased, no matter how powerful the interests at play. Shulman's fearless approach inspired later biographers to dig deeper, challenge the official narrative, and give a voice to those whose stories had long been muffled by the industry's spin. The battle over Harlo proved that, in Hollywood, the fight to control the story is never really over. In Hollywood, stories don't just end. They're rewritten, buried, or banished altogether. The fight over these forbidden biographies proves that even the biggest legends couldn't always control their own narratives. Behind every glossy portrait lies another, messier truth waiting to break free. If the studios could silence these voices once, would the next generation finally hear them without filters or fear? One thing's certain, the real history of Hollywood will always be found in the stories they tried hardest to erase. So, which banned truth shocked you most?